Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Wonderful. Glad to be back from a holiday weekend and ready to talk some football.
How was your weekend?
It's good. Had my parents visit from out of town, which is big excitement. Had actual out of town visitors, and that was in 2020. That counts as a major thrill and probably our summer vacation. So that was good. How about you?
So did you let them inside, or was it just a porch only through the door visit?
Have you seen the movie Biodome? It was kind of like that.
Yeah, mine has been fine. It's been no different. Staying home, doing nothing, wondering if I should actually go on vacation in a week and a half. So we'll see. Who knows? I'll surprise myself, and we'll see how it goes. I'll either swallow the money or, try to make do. But Tom, enough about us. Let's talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes as we continue our positional previews. Today, I thought we would hit the quarterbacks, the tight ends, and the Ohio State special teams. And there's plenty to talk about in each group. I'd say the marquee name among all of those is probably Justin Fields, Ohio State junior quarterback, first-year starter last year, did pretty well. But he's backed up by Gunnar Hoke and the two freshmen, C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller. We'll get into those guys in a bit. But what are your expectations for Justin Fields this year? I want us each to throw out a passing total and a rushing total. And let's see how close we are to each other and how close we end up being this season. So if we're assuming Justin Fields plays 15 games this year, Tom, where are you at in terms of his production in 2020?
Well, I went back and looked, and Dwayne Haskins 2 years ago was at 4,831 yards and 50 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Last year, Fields was at 3,273 yards, 41 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So I think if you're going to assume it's 15 games, he's probably a lot closer to the Haskins number than he is to his own number from last year, because they're probably not going to be able to run the ball quite as well. So if you're going on about a 15-game basis, I'll say like 4,200 yards, maybe 47 touchdowns, and like 7-8 interceptions. I think it's realistic. I mean, we've sort of touched on this before, but I think it's realistic to expect that interception number to tick up a little bit just as he maybe tries to do a little bit more and gets a little more freedom in that offense. I don't know that a slightly higher interception number necessarily is a bad thing for him this year.
I had him with 3,750 yards, which is 250 yards passing a game, which they could easily do 300 if they wanted. I still expect quite a few blowouts in the fourth quarter where there won't be as much passing, but 3,750 yards would still give him the second best passing total in school history. And I pretty clearly that's where we both expect him to finish. Asking him to do more than Dwayne Haskins is it would not be fair to him. Plus, it would be indicative of a season that did not go as planned, don't you think?
Right. Part of the reason that Dwayne Haskins is probably still out of reach for Fields is that the Ohio State defense is hopefully, probably, almost certainly not going to be as bad as it was in 2018. So you're not going to be required to play 4 quarters as often as Dwayne Haskins was. And even when you are, you're not necessarily going to be stuck in shootouts as often as they were in 2018. There were a lot of third quarters where it was like, well, they've scored 40 points already, but the game is still a little close, so they can't run the ball, so Dwayne Haskins has to keep throwing the ball. That is not necessarily a great sign. Having a good, consistent, explosive passing attack, that's good. That is something that will be a good thing for them. But there's also a point where it's like, now you're throwing the ball too much. That's probably a symptom of some other problems somewhere else on the team. I don't think they're going to get there this year.
How many touchdowns did you have him throwing for?
I think I settled on about 47, 48, something like that. Not quite 50, but I think he'll be, he was at 41 last year. I think he will end up north of there, but south of the 50 that Haskins had 2 years ago.
it is crazy that he did throw for 41 touchdowns, given that they didn't really throw it all that much. I mean, he averaged 230 yards passing a game, which is fine, but they really like throwing the ball down inside the 5 and inside the 10, and they were effective at it. I would expect that to continue, provided they have somebody who can do what KJ Hill did to get open. And oh, surprise, they do. He's Garrett Wilson, and I guess that'll have to work out. So, I'm going with. It feels low saying 45 touchdown passes, but I'm with you. I had 7 or 8 interceptions as well. What about your rushing total, Tom?
Last year, he had 137 rushes for 484 yards, which is 3.5 yards per carry and 10 touchdowns. I think he's south of those numbers, at least the rushing yardage total, because I don't think they're going to run him a ton this year. So, from 484 last year, I have him at like 350 this year. Still at 10 touchdowns because you're probably going to, when you're going to run him, it's going to be short yardage and goal line. So I don't know that the touchdown number necessarily drops, but I think the yardage number probably will. What about you?
I'm going to say I have him around 500 yards because I expect the sacks to go down, which, without the sacks, he probably rushed for over 600 yards last year. So if you settle those sacks down and the yards that he does gain, those mean more. I think 500 isn't so bad over the course of 15 games. It should be fine. So we're both well over 4,000 yards of total offense for him. And that doesn't seem like a lot to me. I mean, in terms of, it doesn't seem like it is a lot. It doesn't seem like it's asking him a lot or expecting too much, I guess I would say. We are expecting a lot, but he's more than capable of it in this offense and with his abilities. It doesn't seem like we'd be too far off of, like, we're not asking him to do too much. You know what I'm saying, Tom?
I think our expectations are entirely reasonable. I always think that, but I think that in this case as well. The point about the sack numbers is interesting because I do think they're going to run him less, but I mean, part of the idea that he's going to throw more interceptions this year is he may not wait quite as long as he did last year. And he took some sacks that were probably slightly overly cautious sacks last year.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that is a place where you see that the numbers kind of work in his favor. If he does throw some more interceptions, that's because he's getting rid of the ball a little quicker and maybe being a little bit more risk tolerant and being willing to throw it into tighter windows. And that could show up in smaller sack numbers. That's actually a really interesting point.
The Big Ten Network this past week has unveiled their all-decade football team. And their all-decade quarterback was Braxton Miller. Their all-decade, like, offensive all-purpose player, or their all-decade quarterback was JT Barrett. The all-decade all-purpose guy was Braxton Miller. And I understand that that's probably the right answer, JT Barrett. Dwayne Haskins is the best quarterback in the last decade in the Big Ten, in my opinion. But Justin Fields is going to end up as the best quarterback in Ohio State history if we get to see him one more year. That's how confident I am that he's going to be every bit better. He'll be better than he was last year. And I still go back to last year where we would, the first game was good, but we'd say, hey, he's going to have some issues, maybe with some accuracy against Cincinnati, or, we kept saying, like, at some point things aren't going to be perfect and amazing. And they really never stopped being perfect and amazing. For me, like, he will end up being the best quarterback in Ohio State history, provided he plays this season. And I think 2 seasons is enough to declare that when you consider the style of offense, what we've seen. He may not break any records because you've got JT Barrett's longevity for the career stuff and Dwayne Haskins' outrageous 2018 season for the single season stuff. But he's the perfect combination of both those guys, and maybe better than the sum of what those two could have been. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about it an inherently subjective thing because you're not going based solely on numbers. But if he ends up leading Ohio State to a national championship this year, I think that's a very, very easy argument to make. That I mean, the stats have been there. The stats have been at a high enough level that even if they're not the absolute best, they're pretty darn close. And the production over a 2-year span, if they go 14-1 this year or 13-1 this year or something like that, I mean, it's hard to argue with 26-2 or 27-2 over a 2-year span. And, I mean, he could end up 28-1. And, that's pretty darn good. Those are Rex Kern numbers, and Rex Kern was not doing as much of a heavy lift as Justin Fields is going to do in the current system. So yeah, I'm with you. My expectation is that if they have a full season and he plays at the level that he did last year and, has continued to grow, because he exceeded my expectations, like wildly exceeded my expectations last year. So if he continues to grow and progress, and all indications are that he has, and he's been working hard and he's been training and all of that, he has not been slacking off during the break. My expectation is he takes that next step, and to go from a Heisman finalist in your first year in a program, that next step is you're probably the greatest player or the second greatest player in the nation, and you're also probably leading your team to one of its greatest seasons. So yeah, I think greatest quarterback in Ohio State history is well within his reach this year.
I go back to the tale of the tape show between Ohio State and Michigan that we did last summer before we had seen Fields, and we went down to each position, and we had to give it to Michigan simply because we had seen Shea Patterson do some stuff, and we had never really seen – all we had seen from Justin Fields was the stuff at Georgia. But while we gave it to Michigan, we also said, but don't be surprised when it's actually Justin Fields by the end of the season. And I think we did the same thing for Day versus Harbaugh. It's like you basically had to go with the known quantity just because, but also putting the caveat in there that by October you might know the real answer here with these two guys. And while I think he exceeded expectations, I think we all knew that was possible. And now you look at what could happen this year when they're talking about maybe they'll ask him to do some of the stuff that they would have Dwayne do. And that's why, Tom, I think we both agree that there are going to be a few more interceptions this year because maybe he does take some more chances or tries to fit some stuff into some tighter windows. But you allow that to happen in September, October, and by November, December, January, then he's all the better for it. And now he's the best quarterback in the nation, perhaps. So I think he's going to do pretty well this year, and fans should be excited. Assuming, like if they came into this season and they were down on him for some reason, maybe give him another chance. What do you say?
I'm going to be so bold as to say he might win the Heisman Trophy. Is that bold? Is that a bold thing for me to say?
No, Tom, what is bold is to say he will win the Heisman Trophy, as I said in our bold prediction show, which I still feel kind of bad about because my boldness was not, how like Doritos keeps getting nacho cheesier. Like my boldness was like the original Doritos from like 1982, and what I needed was the super bold Doritos of today, and I don't feel like I gave that to the people. But it's not the first time I've disappointed somebody. It won't be the last time, and I'm okay with that. I've come to terms with that. This is my life. It's what I do. Tom, let's talk about the backup quarterback situation. Gunnar Hoke, he's the guy who was there last year. He wasn't the backup, but he finally got to experience it. He got a spring. No, he didn't get a spring, but he got a fall camp and he got a season. Is there a way for CJ Stroud or Jack Miller to take the job? Is that a possibility? How much does missing spring? That was a huge hit for those two freshmen that they didn't get a chance to put their name in and then really begin to compete in the fall. Now it's all got to happen in the fall, and I think that's going to be tough.
Yeah, that's a lot more pressure on those freshmen to try and cram it all into the fall. The whole point of coming in the spring is you get those 15 practices, you get all those meetings with the coaches, you get all those reps on the practice field. They didn't get any of that this year. They had the 4 practices in the spring. There's been a lot of, a lot of meetings that haven't happened. There's been a lot of just throwing sessions, just going out to the whack and throwing that hasn't happened. They lost a lot of time in the spring, and that makes it a lot more likely to me that Gunnar Hoke starts the season as the backup and potentially is the backup for most or all of the season. I think my expectation was that one of those guys potentially stepped up during the spring and made a real strong push for that backup job in fall camp. Now I think that's probably a lot more difficult. That's not to say it can't happen, but that is a much tougher road, because we've talked to a whole bunch of, every time you talk to an Ohio State quarterback, during like a bowl media day, they talk about how hard it was and how different it is after the first year. The first year you come in and it's like, I didn't really know what was going on last year. It was just I was just kind of faking it and doing what I could. And then, now that I've had a year with the playbook, now I really understand what I'm doing. That's been a very consistent theme with guys we've talked to, everyone from Tate Martell to I think Matthew Baldwin probably talked about some of that stuff. And it is a difficult thing to expect someone to just come in that first year when they don't really have a full grasp of things and expect them to just be ready to go. Chris Chuganoff talked about that too. Like, the difference between Chris Chuganoff his first year and Chris Chuganoff his second year was huge. And I think it was reasonable to think that you might have that kind of jump for Gunnar Hoke as well, where last year Gunnar Hoke, I think, threw 6 passes. I think he was 6 for 6 during the year. I mean, that's functionally, you basically didn't play. And it was, I think, reasonable to expect, okay, you've had a full year. Now you're really going to take a leap. And, to not have the spring, that leaves him a little further behind. But those freshmen coming in without really much of a spring, trying to cram it all into summer and, that summer camp, in addition to the conditioning stuff, in addition to getting into schoolwork and all that kind of stuff, that's just a lot to put on those guys' plates. It doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means it's not going to be as easy for it to happen as it would have been if it had been a normal spring.
Yeah, I think it's going to be way too difficult, and it would just require somebody to just get it. Where it turns out, oh, this guy is a natural, be it C.J. Stroud or Jack Miller, where we knew he was good. That's why we recruited him. We didn't know he was going to be like this and contribute and compete right away. How do we see the season going for both of them? Obviously, they're going to get their 4 games, assuming there are enough blowouts to make that happen. Or maybe one of them doesn't, because you also need to get Gunnar Hoke as much experience as you can, as much playing time as you can, knowing that at any point, if the season happens and Justin Fields comes down with something, he's probably going to be out 2 weeks. So maybe more than ever, this is a year where maybe Gunnar Hoke plays in the second quarter of some games, or they try to work hard on making him ready should anything happen. But then in that same vein, you kind of have to do that with the number 3 guy as well, which has me wondering if at some point, say by week 2 of fall camp, if C.J. Stroud or Jack Miller has separated themselves from each other, like one from the other, do they then label one, okay, you are the guy who is not going to redshirt this year, unless it turns out we can't play you more than 4 games. But then the 4th guy, there's just, look, it's not going to happen this year. Probably not going to get you in 4 games. You're going to be doing a lot of watching. Just the way the season is going to play out for the quarterbacks, you almost have to get them ready in tiers of some sort.
I wonder if they're close. Have we discussed this? That if they're kind of close, maybe it's one guy gets 4 games and the other guy gets 4 games,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of maintain the opportunity to redshirt both of them and keep them together. I think for sure you need to redshirt one of them, because having a little spacing in that quarterback room is probably not a terrible idea. But I think there's a possibility that if Gunnar Hoke really is clearly ahead of both of those guys, you let them both have their 4 games, and okay, Bowling Green and Rutgers, okay, those are CJ Stroud games, and Buffalo and Maryland, okay, those are Jack Miller games, and you're both going to get your snaps, but we're going to try and maintain your eligibility, keep your red shirt, and if you need to tear that off later in the year, then okay, you tear that off. But if one guy in that quarterback room comes down with COVID, it's entirely possible more than one of them does, and you know you get into these kind of ridiculous like lone survivor things where like they keep the Secretary of Agriculture home during the State of the Union just in case something happens. Do you do you need to keep one of those guys in a bubble or something to keep them away just in case everyone else gets sick? I mean, you get into these ridiculous scenarios for this year, but I think at least one of them should redshirt. It's possible that both of them do. I don't think that unless you have a number of injuries or a lot of issues with guys getting sick and you have to tear the red shirt off of both of them because of the sequence of those things happening. I think they are almost certainly going to try to redshirt at least one of them, and maybe it's both if Gunnar Hoke is a clear number 2 this fall, just because those guys didn't get a chance to get in a spring camp this year.
With the threat of COVID, do you think, you let them each play 2 games early, but then you hold them back, knowing that if we need them later in the season, they could step in and then still redshirt. Like, so maybe because how in the past they've held one game back just in case down the stretch they needed them and they didn't want to burn their red shirt. I wonder if maybe they do it 2 games this year, but then also if you're only letting them play twice, it doesn't really set them up for success. Although with the number 3 and number 4 quarterback, there's not going to be enough playing time to get them ready to start. That's going to come through the week of practice. It's going to be so. I hope it's. Obviously, we hope the season is here, and I don't want anybody to lose any games due to COVID. That probably won't happen though, and it's going to be. It might be a crazy season this year where Ohio State might be playing Penn State without Justin Fields, and Penn State might be playing without Sean Clifford, and it's just the backups in there, and it's like when you go see Hamilton and you're getting to watch the understudies. I don't know the names of the understudies, Tom. Do you?
No, I don't. But yeah, I mean, the show must go on, as the saying goes. So someone's got to do it.
Tom, let's go to the tight ends, where Ohio State has Luke Farrell, Jeremy Ruckert, and Jake Hausman returning. They lost Rashad Berry, and they also have Cade Stover back. I didn't even have him on the list here. And Joe Royer, the true freshman, coming in. That's a very deep group of guys who, we saw Farrell and Ruckert and Hausman were all in there last year. They played constantly. Farrell and Ruckert, obviously the top 2 guys. Luke Farrell probably started every game, and Ruckert might have gotten a couple of starts in there. Ruckert finished with 14 catches, and Farrell had 7. I think Hausman had a couple. What are our expectations this year for these guys? Because Hausman's a 5th-year senior, but has never really contributed in terms of numbers. He's been a blocking guy. With Farrell and Ruckert, they can do both. Farrell's a good receiver, even though he doesn't get a lot of attempts. Ruckert, we know, is kind of freakish in that regard. What we saw from Cade Stover in the spring, which was his first practice as a tight end, he looked like a bigger Jeremy Ruckert in terms of just a more aggressive or more physical Jeremy Ruckert type. And I'm feeling pretty good about this group overall. And I think Buckeye fans might want to get ready, Tom, for the year of the tight end at Ohio State.
Always. It is always the year of the tight end, but especially this year. It is a talented group. I mean, Farrell and Ruckert together, I think those are definitely, and just in the receiving end of things, definitely your 2 big receiving threats. Ruckert especially, he's special. He is someone who they've talked about being special. His recruiting rankings screamed, this guy is going to be special. They've talked about him in a way that the expectation within the walls of the Woody Hayes is that he's going to be a special player. And you have seen the flashes. I mean, he had that one-handed catch against Wisconsin in the end zone. Like, it's there. It's just, if they threw him the ball as much as Michigan threw the ball to Jake Butt, he would have Jake Butt stats or better. Like, it's there. It's just, his biggest thing is they have so many different receivers to throw the ball to that you don't get those stats. You don't run up those stats because the receiving core is just so deep. This year, you may not have the, the top three wide receivers so strong that you have to have him, you have to have just one tight end on the field. They may be able to keep running that two tight end look that you saw a decent amount last year. And if so, you have an opportunity for Ruckert to really have a standout season. I think there's a possibility that Ruckert is a first or second round pick in the 2021 NFL draft, almost regardless of stats, just based on the ability and the physical gifts, the physical tools. So, yeah, I have big expectations for him this year. And, yeah, I mean, Cade Stover is the same way that they've talked glowingly about Jeremy Ruckert for years. You talk to the offensive coaches about Cade Stover and the possibility there, and you can tell they are legitimately excited. It's not just, well, we're going to see what we have. It's like you can tell in the way they talk about a player who's just moved to another position, who are just gotten there. They are legitimately excited about Cade Stover. And I think even if Jeremy Ruckert goes and they lose Farrell, Ruckert, Houseman after the year, if Stover is there in 2021, I think the tight end position is going to be in at least decent shape.
So they caught 25 passes as a group last year. If I set the over-under on 25 for just Jeremy Ruckert, where are you going?
Just Jeremy Ruckert. Probably under that. I would say over 25 for the tight end unit on the whole, but probably under that for Ruckert. Probably, but I mean, it's a question. What is the last time an Ohio State tight end caught 25 passes? Do you know that off the top of your head?
I know Ben Hartsock caught like 33 one year. Jeremy Hireman or Van Nett were in the 20s. Jeff Hireman and Van Nett were both in the 20s one year. 25, I don't know. A good show host would have researched that, Tom. Okay. Would it terribly shock you if he had like 30 catches this year?
No, it would not. It would not completely shock me, because you have Chris Olave, you have Garrett Wilson, and there's a bunch of other guys that it's like, yeah, they should feel pretty good about these guys as receivers, and they've got running backs who they should feel pretty good about as running backs. But there's not like 4 or 5 wide receivers who are like have to be out there every play wide receivers. I think they have guys who could turn into that, but they don't have like surefire, you have to be 4 wide every play. You're going to, that's going to keep tight ends off the field kind of thing at the wide receiver position. So I think there's an opportunity there for the tight ends this year, and Ruckert has continued to develop in the way that he has. I don't think 30 is completely outrageous. I would, like I said, I would go under 25, but I had to think about it. And if I had to think about 25, then 30 is at least within the realm of possibility.
I could see him being a little bit of a security blanket early in the season as these freshmen get their feet wet, where maybe in the first half of the season, Ruckert has like 15 to 20 catches, and then it slows down over the second half as defenses maybe focus on him a little bit more and other guys are there to step up. So, say like 17 catches over the first half of the season, then, 8 or 10 over the second half. I'm going to go over that 25, knowing that he does play tight end, and so it's probably foolish of me to say that. What about Jake Stoneburner in like 2012 or something? Maybe? I don't know.
Maybe. Sure.
Maybe.
Possible. I'm just thinking back to, yeah, those teams didn't throw the ball real efficiently, but they didn't have real good wide receivers to steal a bunch of receptions. So yeah, I mean that's a possibility. But yeah, I guess the overarching point is it's been a minute. So 25 receptions for a tight end for Ohio State in a season would be a pretty impressive total.
Jeff Hireman in 2013 had a whopping 26.
Oh, there you go.
So there you go. Nick Van Nett, 19 in 2014. and that will and 19 again the following year, and then I probably no reason to go 24 for Marcus Baugh. We kind of forgot about him in 2016, but there 28 Marcus Baugh in 2017. Look at that. So pretty much every single year, a tight end that catches 30 to 40 balls for Ohio State. I didn't even realize that. That's great to know. Who knew?
See, I told you, every year is the year of the tight end.
Tight end you. Tom, let's go to special teams, where Ohio State returns everybody except for the only perfect Buckeye in Ohio State history, Liam McCullough, at the long snapper position. But they've got his younger brother there, and he'll be competing with other guys. So, as I was jokingly saying, like, this is tight end you, this is like legitimately long snapper you, where a guy comes in and he's just really good for 3 or 4 years. And I would expect that to happen again. Blake Cobiel, you look at his numbers, 13 of 15 field goals last year, 10 of 13 in 2018, has made all 122 of his extra points in his career. He's solid. Drew Chrisman was great his first 2 years. The precision dropped a little bit, Tom, last year. And let me tell you, let me give you this, Tom. In 2017, Drew Chrisman, 51 punts, 4 touchbacks. In 2018, 61 punts, 1 touchback. Last year, 64 punts, 8 touchbacks. What do you think?
It's funny because I remember watching him last year and us talking about it during games. Like it seems like he's just off this year. And we never got an answer on, was he hurt? Was there, was it just a technical thing? You just kind of get the yips. What is going on? And his numbers were still good last year. He was otherworldly good in 2018, just absolutely otherworldly good. And, some of that is probably that he didn't have Terry McLaurin as a gunner last year, and that probably cost him a touchback or two, but he still was just not quite what he was in 2018. And that's not a realistic expectation. 60-something punts and 1 touchback. That's just like, that's not fair. Sorry. Like that's like Justin Fields. Well, you only threw 1 interception in the first 13 games last year. Why did you throw 3 interceptions this year? That's not a realistic expectation for a punter. You do not have a punter get interviewed on the field by national TV after a game because he has been so insanely good. Like that is not a normal thing. That is not that is not how this works. So part of that is Drew Chrisman probably setting himself up with some slightly unrealistic expectations. But if he can be just halfway between 2018 and 2019 Drew Chrisman this year, that'd be huge. That would be a huge weapon for Ohio State. And I think the general idea is you don't have to punt and lean on punting and lean on defense and they'll be able to score enough that they can maybe go for it more and not just try and have him pin people back. But I think he should be just fine this year. 2018 is not a realistic expectation, but anywhere somewhere between the last 2 years, if his productivity is anywhere around there, that's probably more than good enough for this year's Ohio State team.
What if I were to tell you, Tom, that while his punting has declined, his bottle flipping has improved? Do you think there would be is that an argument that, hey, enough of the bottle flipping, maybe get back to the punting?
His holding has also remained excellent. I mean, for as much credit as Liam McCullough gets and deserves as the only perfect long snapper, he also did not have a holder botching any of those snaps either. So that's Drew Chrisman has been a very underrated piece of that special teams machine in the last few years. I'm very interested to see how Rowan McCullough does. He's obviously the younger brother of Liam McCullough. I think that's going to be something that if at some point there's a bad snap, Ohio State fans are going to just freak out. Like, I forgot that could happen, because I literally cannot remember a bad snap from Liam McCullough over the last 4 years. I don't know that he's had one that was, that he would talk about it and it'd be like, well, that snap was kind of high because Drew caught it and it was his hands were like 6 inches higher than we like to have them. And it's like, that's not a bad snap. That's a not completely perfect snap. So, yeah, I think the expectations have been set at a level that's completely unrealistic. And now his little brother has to live up to that. So, yeah, this is probably every little brother's worst nightmare, having to live up to the legacy of their perfect older brother.
That's why nobody has ever heard of Ralphie Jordan. Tom, so who's going to return the kicks and the punts? Last year it was Garrett Wilson returning punts. He had a big one early on, then kind of diminished from there. But I was always confident that one, he was going to catch the punt, and that two, that he could do something with it. We've seen Demario McCall over the years get little glimpses, but never really doing much with them. You've got a couple of freshmen in Jackson Smith and Jigba and Mookie Cooper who could maybe get involved there. Anybody else that we saw in the spring back there that you remember? Any defenders or anything like that?
I think they had C.J. Saunders back there for punts when we were there. We saw Garrett Wilson, Mookie Cooper, C.J. Saunders, and was there a cornerback back there or a safety?
It felt like there was a white jersey, but I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
might have
Julian
been.
Fleming or Chris Olave. Were they back there at all?
I don't think so. I think Mookie Cooper was the only one who was returning punts. I don't think we saw them run any kind of kickoff coverage stuff. So we don't really have a good answer there. But yeah, I mean, I think Garrett Wilson has to be the leader for the punt return. I mean, that was a position where it seemed like Ohio State was perfectly happy to have KJ Hill back there and fair catch it, and just figure, well, the offense is good enough that they don't need to have, you don't need a huge play on special teams. Just give the ball to the offense and the offense will handle it. And I think that was kind of the mindset for a while. But then Garrett Wilson comes out, and I think it might have been his first punt return of his career was immediately the longest punt return they had in like 5 seasons. So yeah, I think it's hard to keep Garrett Wilson off the field on punt returns and, maybe kick returns. I don't think we've seen him on kick returns. I would assume that Demario McCall is probably back there on kick return still. Maybe it's a Chris Olave. They may not want to put Chris Olave back there just for, just to kind of keep him protected. They have other fast guys that they can trust back there, and just let him touch it on offense. But yeah, I think Garrett Wilson for sure on punts, and I guess Demario McCall until proven otherwise on kickoffs. What about you?
Yeah, that's where I am, and you give him somebody next to him to help block and talk about DeMario on kickoff returns. But kickoff returns have been so diminished by the rules. Like, I was looking up stats a couple days ago, and I don't have them here in front of me. Well, actually, I do, Tom. This is amazing. So going back in 2009, there were 84 kickoff touchdowns overall by 52 teams nationally. Last year, there were 53 total by 37 teams. In 2018, there were only 38 kickoff return touchdowns by 31 teams. So these numbers are just, the teams are perfectly happy getting the ball to 25. You avoid the collisions, some of them. Some of those collisions are still happening down the field, so you don't avoid them all. But more than ever, coaches are okay just getting the ball to 25, and coaches are also very okay with kicking the ball into the end zone to ensure that there is no return. And so the teams that can still, I guess, return the kickoff, that's like an added weapon. But that hasn't been Ohio State since Paris Campbell was a redshirt sophomore or so, because he wasn't returning kickoffs his last year or two because of the concussion situation. But he was the last really dangerous returner, and I don't know that he had more than one kickoff return for a touchdown, if that.
I don't think he had one. I believe, unless I'm remembering incorrectly, I believe the last one was Jordan Hall against Michigan in 2010. I think that was
he got tackled at like the 5 or something on one of his long ones. But
yeah,
in 2017, 9 kickoff returns for a 37-yard average. 2016, he had 21 returns for a 28-yard average. But yeah, no kickoff returns since what you say 2000. Ray Small had one in 2009. Jordan Hall had one in 2010.
Yeah, I think
And
Jordan Hall against Michigan in 2010 is the last one they had,
that's
and
that's
it's
it.
that's amazing. You consider the amount of speed and skill talent that Ohio
Mhm.
State has, but if the defense is not giving up a lot of scores, you don't get that many chances on kick return. And again, they may have been prioritizing to some degree ball security and just give the ball to the offense. The offense will be just fine. That was not necessarily the case during the heyday of Ted Ginn when sometimes they needed Ted Ginn to run it back because there was no other way that ball was getting across that goal line. So that's probably a little bit of a philosophical shift both within the program and also within the game on the whole. But yeah, that is not something where I would expect the kick returner to have a massive impact on the game, but it's a good way for, someone like Demario McCall who's, been in the program for a while. And if he's stuck behind other guys on the depth chart, whether that's at running back or at wide receiver, it's a good way to get him on the field, get him some touches, and hopefully keep him happy and keep everyone, working and pulling in the same direction.
Ohio State had 13 kickoff returns last year. So Mario McCall had 10. Xavier Johnson had one. Marcus Crowley had one, and Chris Olave had one. And so, yeah, you're not going to have a lot of touchdowns if you only get 13 attempts, which, man, that is crazy. But that's also another byproduct of we've got a really good offense. Let's just take the ball to 25, and we'll go 75 yards, and we'll score, and then we'll do it again in the next time we get the ball. Tom, anything else from special teams that you wanted to touch on before we call it a day?
No, I think we have talked enough punting to maintain our credential for Big Ten Media Days. So I think
Yes.
we're good.
All right. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you for listening. As always, make sure to check out BuckeyeScoop.com where we have all kinds of coverage, recruiting, football. There's going to be the basketball tournament stuff is coming up where Carmen's crew is playing this week. So we'll have coverage of that as well. Make sure to catch Tom every morning, Monday through Friday on the Morning Scoop where he has different guests every day. Tom, anything else? Check out the rest of the Gives in the Bank. Bill Green had the guy who runs South Florida Express 7-on-7 team on last week, and it's really good. Listen, go check that out. Talking about a whole bunch of former Buckeyes that played on that 7-on-7 team and the recruiting process of them. Told the story of how Ryan Shazier was going to be a Florida Gator. Ohio State wanted him, but there was no chance. They told Luke Fickell, like, you have no shot at Ryan Shazier. And Luke Fickell was at Ryan Shazier's school the day that Urban Meyer announced his retirement from Florida. And so, like, the best timing in Luke Fickell's life, he was at the school. And, of course, the rest is history. But some really good stories from that. Brett Getz is the guy's name who spoke with Bill. And it's a really good listen. Just some neat insights. And really, Tom, that's the thing with so many of these different podcasts and the different pieces and the chats. You're getting insight that you can't really get anywhere else.
Right. That's the thing. Like we talk to the people that we talk to and have been to the events we've been to. Mark Givler and Alex Gleitman and Bill Green, like those guys have been doing different elements of Ohio State football, the recruiting and covering high school football, and have different connections with different parts of the college football and college football related world, that it is really interesting to listen to some of those conversations that I have really enjoyed hearing some of their podcasts. That's all free. All the podcasts are free. So even if you are not a member of BuckeyeScoop.com, that's something you can just check out. Just search Buckeye Scoop on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice, and you can find Gives in the Bank. You can find Vegas Knows. You can find all the great shows. And if you have followed us over from the Ozone, Silver Bullets is going to be there. Sloopcast is there. There is a ton of great content, all sorts of different topics, all sorts of different focuses. Alex Gleitman has Around the Oval, where he talks to a whole bunch of Ohio State's upcoming commits. So he had a good one with Travion Henderson. He had a good one with Ben Christman recently. He had a good one with Kyle
Reed
McCord.
Carrico.
Yeah, Reed Carrico. Like
One quick thing about that one, Tom.
Yep.
which, not to interrupt you, but I'm going to interrupt you. He was asking Reed Carrico, like, so where are you size, like height and weight wise right now? And he's like, well, I think I'm listed as 6'3", but I'm actually like 6'2.5". Although, right now, probably 6'2 3/4. And I weigh about 225.5 pounds. And it's interesting. It was interesting to both me and Alex. Like, here's a kid who is like a top 100 player. He's going to be a Buckeye, won't give himself 6'3", and talks about, small town. He's a small town football player, and he wants to be an example for other small town guys. Like, you can make it out of a small town to big things. And it's just a little thing. Like, he wouldn't give himself 6'3", and I thought, it's a little thing, but it provides a little bit more insight than just a guy who is, just some random football player. It's like there's some thinking going on inside his mind right now that lets you know that he's probably going to be pretty big. And it's just one little thing, but it's some insight.
Yeah, those conversations have all been really interesting because you also hear them talk about, so who else are you recruiting? Who else are you trying to add to the class? Which is always really interesting because a lot of times those conversations, those relationships are what end up landing someone, convincing someone to join the Ohio State class versus the Alabama or Clemson or Georgia or wherever else are being recruited. Those relationships and the relationship with the coaches and the relationships with the other guys in that class can be what makes the difference there. So, yeah, if you were into recruiting, that's a great one to listen to. If you're into, the Gives in the Bank one, again, great for recruiting. If you're into gambling, the Vegas Knows one is great. I mean, there is something for everyone there. I would encourage you to take a listen. Just search Buckeye Scoop on Apple Podcasts, whatever your podcast platform of choice is. Find the one you like, subscribe there, rate us, review us. That helps us reach a new audience. So subscribe to all of them, rate them all, review them all, whatever you're into, there is something there for you.
Well said, Tom. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you guys later.